Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is my name is Parameshwaran, Param for short. I'm going to take you through course of ITIL 4. What is it? What is all about? What are the value that it is going to bring to all the delegates? So this will be this webinar will be for 45 minutes to 60 minutes. What we're going to talk about is what is ITIL. I'm going to talk about the roadmap of ITIL, how ITIL evolved. Yeah, and ITIL, the V3, the earlier version itself was the best practices. Then why do we go for ITIL 4 now? And what is the approach of ITIL 4? We're going to talk about the 4 dimensions of service management. We're going to talk about guiding principles, the service value chain, ITIL practices, and continual improvement. At the same time, I'm going to also talk about the roadmap for ITIL certification. Question and answers will be taken up later on, right? And this is me. I'm an independent speaker, mentor, and coach. I have about 25 years of IT experience, significant hands-on technology project and program management, domain expertise on pharmaceuticals, retail, oil, gas, and education, that is in training. I'm an ITIL expert, triple ITIL expert, you can say, in the sense that it takes about 22 credits to become an ITIL expert. I have about 67 credits. I am PMP project PMP certified, ITIL 4 Foundation and Managing Professional certified, DevOps, Scrum Master, Agile Service Management are my areas. But my forte is on IT service management. Yeah. Before I talk about ITIL 4, I just want to take you across for how IT has evolved. IT evolved, there are about 5 levels, starting from technology centric to business centric. Technology driven, level 1 was technology driven, where people were working in silos. Incident management was only introduced, it was created, and incident management, it is all a reactive way of delivering IT services. Then from technology driven, it went into technology control, where you were talking about bringing in stability to infrastructure. The availability components, the components of different component IT components were measured in terms of availability, and problem management was introduced. There was process were being automated, and then from level 2 you went to level 3, where technology integration happened. You're talking about consolidating availability, capacity planning, disaster recovery. All these things happen in level 3. Level 4, we talk about service provisioning, where service level agreement comes into picture, and IT needs to deliver the services based on the commitment on service level agreement. Change management was introduced, both at the development stage as well as in operations, right? And then we went into the level 5, which talks about strategic contribution. This is how IT from technology centric, it gets into a business centric, where IT becomes an enabler. Every organization have a vision, and to achieve the vision, they now treat IT as an enabler. So that's how important IT is, right? This is just a snapshot of how IT has evolved. Now, what are we talking about is how IT has become an enabler, how IT has become a business-centric, right? Let me just take you to how ITIL all started about. ITIL is Information Technology Infrastructure Library. It is there since 1989. And, it all started with version 1 and version 2. Version 1, you had a lot of books, publications, about 36 publications. That is why it's called library. Okay, 36, and nobody had real time to go through it, forget implementing it. So ITIL V1 did not really take off. Then V2 came into picture. They brought it down to 6 books. From 36 books to they brought it down to 6 books. Still, it was not so very popular. But the second edition of V2, where they brought it into 2 books, they call it as service support and service delivery. That really took off. A lot of changes happened to the processes, the framework. Significant contribution came from IBM, HP. These are the consultants, who are working, were dirtying their hands. In fact, they were off consulting services. So they brought in the inputs from after delivering services to customer. So they brought in all these changes and improvements to the processes in the second edition of V2. So over a period of time, these processes, like incident management, problem management, change management, availability, capacity, continuity, security, service, service request, all these things matured in the second edition of V2. So it became quite popular. A lot many organizations started adopting to ITIL V2 second edition, and they were getting the return on investment. I mean, they had to invest on the tools, isn't it? And the way the service was being delivered, and it was delivered very cost effectively, efficiently, and customers were quite happy when service was being delivered that's aligned to ITIL framework. So that is the second edition of V2. Then why go for V3? V3 came in the year 2007. It's a significant improvement to V2. What is it improvement? The approach itself was different. They brought in the service lifecycle approach. The service lifecycle approach, you see that, it comprises of 5 lifecycle stages. That is service strategy, service design, service transition, service operation, and continuous service improvement. So this is the lifecycle stage. They went into the lifecycle approach. The processes, of course, were not modified. They were just picked up and put it into a correct slot. The reason being, earlier, even though the processes were being quite matured, it was not organized properly. But now, the life cycle V3, life cycle approach, all these processes, for example, incident management was put into service operation slot, life cycle stage, and change management went into transition life cycle stage. Financial management for IT services went into strategy, right? And similarly, problem management went into operations. Then one has to design for availability, capacity, continuity, security, and so on. So that found a place in service design. So that is how this was organized. The life cycle stage was organized. And it was not a good framework, good IT practice framework. It was a best IT framework. Lot many organizations adopted to ITIL, and it became very popular. When V3 is popular, then why go for V4, ITIL V4? See, a lot of changes are happening. In fact, IT services have totally changed because the services have become very disruptive. A lot of technology has evolved, right from you have this blockchain, you have that artificial intelligence, you have machine learning, you have a lot many you have virtual engines, all this has become a change. All this technology has changed a lot. So now the customer wants customers demanding for very good services from the service provider. They have a choice. You don't deliver properly, we go to another vendor, another service provider. So the service provider, to sustain themselves, they have to embrace this technology to be relevant. And at the same time, you need to compete with your competitors also. So they have to go in for this sort of a technology. Take this example, Amazon. Amazon, it has changed so many things. You can, sitting at home, you can order, isn't it? And that gets delivered to your home. And you don't like it, you can exchange it. You get a refund, no questions asked, isn't it? Similarly, you talk about Uber services. The thing is, you don't own a single vehicle, but still Uber is in cab services, right? So these are the disruptive services I'm talking about. The brick and mortar offices has taken a beating because many of them are moving towards buying online. So that's how the services has changed. And you named IT for it. IT becomes an enabler. IT has become a business centric, isn't it? So that is how the way IT delivers a service has changed drastically because business wants it that way, right? That is the reason we are talking about moving towards a digital transformation. When you talk about these are the things what I told you, it's all a digital transformation, artificial intelligence, machine learning. You talk about blockchain, you talk about Internet of Things. Isn't all this have changed a lot? Okay. Now, what has happened is the earlier version, the approach towards building a project is a waterfall approach. What is waterfall approach? I told you about 5 life cycle stages, isn't it? That is a strategy, design, transition, operation, and continuous service improvement. These are the 5 life cycle stages you have. And in a waterfall approach, what happens is you only go to the next stage when you are sure about the previous stage. For example, you got to be very clear with your strategy, isn't it? Whether whatever you decide upon, whether you want to bring in a new product or a new service, you need to look at lot many things like is it whatever you're going to do, is it going to deliver value to the customer? What is the budget that you have? And what is the risk? Do you have the competencies and skill set? Well, so that is, we talk about it in strategy. The same thing holds good in the other approach what we are talking about, that is an agile approach. That also holds good. But then in the earlier version, the next life cycle stage is design. That is, you need to design, spend a lot of time in designing. If you look at it, to build up a project, you're going to spend at least 70% of your time in designing. Yeah, so that takes a lot of time. But Agile calls this as analysis paralysis. Why do you want to spend so much of time in design? Should you not deliver it quickly? So what happens is, in a waterfall approach, there's a comprehensive documentation, and that has been signed off by all the relevant stakeholders. It then goes as an input to transition, and in transition, you start start writing codes, start building up the infrastructure, and then you build a product or a service. And this is shown to the customer or the stakeholders only when everything is complete. By the time, I mean, this takes a lot of time, isn't it? It takes a lot of time. Maybe depending on how big the project is, it might take anything between 8 to 12 months or 18 months. So you are showing something to the stakeholders. Say after 12 months or 18 months, you are showing them what you have developed. And by the time they see the importance is lost, when they come with the feedback, that might need a lot of changes. And when you want to make changes at that point of time, the cost becomes significantly higher. and the morale, the energy that you put in building up this project goes for a toss, isn't it? I mean, the time you lost, the money has lost, and the energy you put, everything goes waste because you got to redo. But that is a waterfall approach or the traditional approach. Even now, many companies are using this approach. We can't discard this. Earlier, you had the tolerance to receive a project after 18 months. The business goes as usual. Earlier, I'm talking about 10-15 years earlier, where the IT did not depend on the business did not depend on IT. It was still going on. So the business had that time to wait for IT to come up with solutions. But now, as I said, a lot of digital transformation has taken place. Yeah, so the service provider wants the IT solutions to, because the changes to come very quickly. Changes has to happen quickly, and you can't afford to give a low quality product or a service, and at the same time, it can't be inadequate. So you got to work quickly and deliver what is called as a potentially releasable product or a service. So what you're doing is you're breaking up into small segments and coming up with a potentially releasable product or a service. Yeah, you do it in a iteratively incremental way. Yeah, you don't spend since you're broken down into small segments, you don't spend too much of time in design, and you deliver it. Potentially releasable product or service, you release it, and you get a feedback from the stakeholder quickly, and you make changes to that. Yeah, so that is what an agile approach is. Yeah, so the circumstances demand that you shift from a waterfall approach to the agile approach. And since the way the IT service has changed, you need a robust framework, and that is where ITIL has moved from the waterfall approach to the agile approach. No, ITIL 4 is not totally agile. It's a blend with the waterfall approach as well as agile approach. So there's a big change in this. In fact, you would see the whole big change in V3 came in 2007. There was a small changes in 2011 in ITIL framework. After that, a significant change, that is ITIL 4, happened in 2019. So a lot of time has gone by in coming up with a new version, but they have come up with an excellent framework. Many organizations are recognizing ITIL 4 because ITIL comes from, it is there since 1985, it is there, and people trust ITIL framework for the best IT provisioning framework. And now we are moved into ITIL 4, which is a blend of waterfall and agile. So that's the reason the reason for going for ITIL 4 is because of digitalization. So what is the approach of ITIL 4? The ITIL 4 approach is, you have something called 4 dimensions of service management. And these 4 dimensions, talks about organization and people. You talk about information and technology. You need value stream and process, and you have partners and suppliers. See, all these are 4 dimensions. The 4 dimensions, when you apply this to a service value system, which I'm going to talk to you briefly, that is when you come up with a change in product and services. Okay, so we talk about organization and people. We talk about what sort of an organization you are. Whether are you a product-based organization or are you a flat organization? Is the organization based on divisions? All the sort, and how the culture of we talk about the culture of the organization. What sort of competencies should people possess? So leadership skills, motivation skills, how they delegate tasks to people, down the resource, how people under resource they execute their daily activities, meet the deadlines. These are the things that organization and people's focus sphere talk about, including communication and so on. Then we talk about information technology. Actually, a lot of changes has happened to technology, right? So we're going to discuss about technology in this aspect. What is information, and where should the data be? How is data processed? When data process becomes information, and how information, when analyzed, becomes knowledge. These are the things we talk about when we talk about information technology. Then we talk about partners and suppliers. So partners and suppliers are two different things. We talk about the difference between partners. We talk about the difference between suppliers. We talk about insourcing. We talk about outsourcing. We talk about multi-sourcing, right? And we talk about how to evaluate a supplier. All these things we talk about, what due diligence one has to do in picking up a partner or a supplier. We talk about that. And then we talk about the value stream and process, how different components need to get connected, in delivering an output, something that delivers value. So what is the process that you need to follow? What are the what is a value stream? We talk about value stream, and at the same time we talk about a lot of concepts in ITIL, like what is a service, what is a service management, what is cost, what are the two cost elements in cost, what is risk, what are the two elements in risk, and then we talk about service offerings, we talk about service relationship management. These are the things that we discuss, and then talk about process. What is a process, and what is a practice? What's the difference between a process and a practice? Because ITIL, earlier version, it was called incident management process, problem management process, change management process, and so on. And service desk was called a function. That was in the earlier V3 version. But in ITIL 4, everything is called as practice. It is incident management practice, problem management practice, change enablement practice, service desk practice, and so on. So these are the changes that has happened. So we're going to talk about these 4 dimensions at the same time. You're going to talk about the external factors like political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental. Right. So delegates will have a very good idea about what are these 4 dimensions of service management. Okay. Then see, this is a very important component in service value system. Okay, it is called SVS, service value system, and these are the components that goes into service value system. Like you have guiding principles, you have governance, you have service value chain, you have practices, you have continual improvement. Can you see that? So this is called as a service value system, and all these things we're going to talk about each and every component, like guiding principles. There are 7 guiding principles. We're going to talk about those 7 guiding principles, right? Then governance, that's where the direction comes from top down, and value chain, another very important activity. There are 6 elements in there are 6 elements in value chain. We're going to talk about all the 6 elements of value chain. Okay, and in ITIL Foundation, there are about 15 practices, and totally there are 33 practices, but what as per the syllabus in ITIL Foundation is about 15 practices. We're going to talk about all the 15 practices. Right, and that is what service value system is. And we're going to talk about service. We talked extensively about service value chain. This is what has been changed, in the sense we talk about this in an agile approach, and this way we compare this with the earlier version V3. Okay. And see, these are the, for example, you talk about guiding principles. There are 7 guiding principles, and we talk about what is focused on value. You need to focus on what customers' requirement, how to deliver value to the customer. Yeah, and start where you are talks about bringing in changes. take the current, look into the current state, and then go into a desired state, progress iteratively with feedback, breaking down into small segments and deliver a potentially releasable product or a service. Collaborate and promote visibility. To whom are you going to collaborate? How is it you're going to promote the changes that you want to do? How are you going to communicate? That collaborate and promote visibility talks about. Think and work holistically. How 4 dimensions of service management are, totally holistically, it's applied on service value system, to deliver a product or a service. Then keep it simple. Keep it simple, do small things, get quick wins. That's what keep it simple and practical talks about. And then we talk about optimize and automate. What is it that you need to optimize? You need to optimize the processes before you want to automate it. So look at those areas where it doesn't deliver non-value add steps you might be following. Identify that, eliminate that, and then automate it. So we are going to talk about this in length. I just have given you a brief, of what this guiding principle is. We're going to talk about it with a lot of examples. We're going to talk about, so that you're very clear with all these guiding principles. Right. And then we talk about value chain. This is another very important aspect. If you look at it, everything starts with a trigger. For example, you want to bring in a change, let us say. Your request for change becomes a trigger for you to start planning, engaging, and then obtain, build, design and transition, deliver and support. These are all the 6 activities, plan, engage, improve, obtain, build, design, transition, and deliver and support. These are the activities that goes into a service value chain. Everything starts with a trigger. For example, output of engage can be an input to plan. Output of plan can be an input to design and transition, obtain and build. Output of design and transition can be an input to deliver and support. You go through all these things and improvement. What are the improvement that you need to do even after the product or services into operations? You can't be complacent. You have to bring in improvement, isn't it? So all these things goes into service value chain. You have to engage the right stakeholders, right? And planning happens at all levels, everything, so finally, when you are delivering and delivering support, it should value should be realized by the customer. Whatever the customer has asked for, you should deliver it. And this is what a service value chain talks about. Okay. And see, you have a list of practices. You have these are the practices, 15 practices we are going to discuss in length with a lot of examples. Security management protects your information assets. Relationship management talks about BRM, business relationship management. And then supplier management. How do you ensure? What are the due diligence that you would do in picking up a supplier or a partner? IT asset management. Your IT assets you have, how many different type of IT assets that you have. The life cycle of IT assets. You need to have an inventory of your IT assets. What is the book value that is after depreciation? We talk a lot about IT asset management. Then event management, proactively managing your IT services by defining a threshold. So once again, we're going to talk in length of what is monitoring and event management is all about. Release management, deployment management. There's a lot of difference. I'm going to show you the difference between release management in a waterfall approach and at the same time what it is in an agile way of doing it. Yeah. So we're going to talk about deployment. We're going to talk about release management, configuration management. How do you automate in capturing all your CIs, configuration items, into a CMDB, configuration management database, and how do you ensure that it is accurate? Because a lot of decision is taken based on your configuration items, right? So we're going to talk about all that. Then change enablement. What is a change? And what are the 3 different types of changes? We're going to talk about that. And then we'll talk about continual improvement. The more focus is on continual improvement in ITIL 4. We're going to talk about the CSI model. What is a vision? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? How do you want to get there? Take action. Did you get there? How to keep the momentum going? Now we're going to talk about all that continual improvement with a lot of examples that can give you a grasp of ITIL. So in my session, what I normally do is I come up with examples with IT and non-IT related. Yeah, and so that you get a good grasp of the concepts, and that will help you take up your exam and clear your exams. Okay, so then we talk about incident management, problem management, service request, desk, service desk, different types of service desk, service level management. What are the three different types of SLM? We want to talk about all that. Okay, so that is all in practices. Now, see, I'm talking about a release management. Now, this is a waterfall approach, and this is an agile way of doing it. Now, look at it. In a waterfall approach, there is a release plan, and changes to infrastructure has happened, changes to software has happened, and changes to training and documentation has happened. Now, everything you deploy and release all together, one shot. You just don't deploy release infrastructure. You don't deploy release software. You don't deploy release train documentation. You wait for everything to happen and then you release and then you have a review. This is a waterfall approach. Now look at the agile way of doing it. These are the same changes to infrastructure, change to software, and training documentation. Okay, and if you look at it, the moment you change the infrastructure, you deploy it, you release it, you get a feedback, a review. If you have changed the software, you don't wait for others to others to happen. You just deploy, release, and get a feedback. Similarly, the same thing happens to training and documentation. So that's what happens. You break it down into small segments, ensure that you deploy it, you release it, get a feedback, bring in changes, whatever the feedback you get. So that's the difference. Hope you get a difference between the waterfall approach and the agile approach. Okay, and yeah. So with this, I have briefly I have said what ITIL 4 has got to offer, and also given you what's the difference between the earlier version of ITIL, that is a V3 and V4. So earlier version, it's all to do with waterfall approach, and now things have changed. Things have become very disruptive. So there has to be a new way of delivering IT services. It is being delivered, but you need a robust framework. So that is how ITIL 4 has come into picture, where it's a blend of waterfall and agile. Okay, so that's also the component I spoke to you about, 4 dimensions of service management. I spoke to you about the components of service value system. It comprises of guiding principles. It talks about governance. It talks about service value chain. It talks about practices, and then continual improvement. Right now, let me talk to you about the certification scheme. How to go about what is it all about. Now, if you look at it, certification, if you look at it, you see that there is an ITIL foundation, which is a prerequisite. That is, you need to go through the training. You need to take up the exam and pass the exam. Once you pass the exam, it is a prerequisite. You have a prerequisite. Prerequisite for what? There are 2 streams. One is a managing professional, another is a strategic leader. So you can either do managing professional, and you can also do a strategic leader. So you are qualified, you have a prerequisite. If you do both, you have a prerequisite to become an ITIL master. Okay, and who should be doing ITIL managing professional? All these people who are customer facing services, they would, it makes a lot of sense for them to do. Create, deliver, and support is one module. It's all part of ITIL specialist. Then there's another module, drive stakeholders value. another module, high velocity IT, and then you have something for strategist, direct, plan, and improve. What happens is each one is a module by itself, and you got to take the exam, pass the exam. So if you have all the 4 modules, you passed all the 4 modules, then you can call yourself as ITIL managing professional. Okay. And then if you want to become a strategist, a strategic leader, yeah, so you don't have to do the strategic, direct, plan, and improve, because you've already done it here. You can take one paper, digital and IT strategist, and you pass this, you get a certificate. Now you have the prerequisites to become an ITIL master. Of course, it needs, you can't straight away apply for becoming an ITIL master, just because you have done all this. You need to have a practical experience, how you have implemented ITIL framework in your organization. And of course, all this qualifications goes, it's a prerequisite. Then you should arrange for for what do you say? I mean, there will be evaluation. A panel of masters will evaluate you, and it's going to be. It's not going to be that easy. But they will go to grill you because you're going to be a master, nothing less. So you should be in a position to answer them convincingly. And if they find that you have that knowledge of ITIL, and then you have that practical exposure, then they say, well, you are an ITIL master. So very few ITIL masters are there. So that's a roadmap. And if you're very serious about ITIL, your IT as a career, then I would strongly recommend, don't go for foundation, and then don't stop at foundation. Go for all these modules, and your work experience that you're working along with your certification goes a long way, in becoming an ITIL master. So that is one thing. Now there is another way, in the sense, managing professional. This is what I told you. But there is for people who have got credits in the earlier version of V3. Yeah, for example, I told you I got about 67 credits, right? So what I did, though I did I did get trained from the trainers itself, from Axelos on ITIL 4 Foundation. Though I'm certified in ITIL 4 Foundation, I am also certified in, I'm a managing professional transition. How did I do that? You need to, if you have minimum 17 credits in the previous version of V3, yeah, what you can do is you can straight away take up this managing professional. It is a 5-day program. Each day you cover, one day is set aside for foundation, the next day is set aside for CDS, then DSV, then high HVIT, then direct plan improve. On the 5th day you take up the exam, and you pass the exam, you become a managing professional. Otherwise, that is for people with 17 credits minimum, right? Otherwise, I told you how to become a managing professional. Each one is a certification by itself. Yeah. So that is how you become a managing professional certified. All right. I will take leave. Yeah. And thank you very much being part of it. It's a wonderful certification. So if you're serious about it, you can just get in touch with Cognixia and enroll yourself. I'm the trainer day after tomorrow. So 27, 28th, and next weekend, that is Saturday, Sunday, 4 hours. Yeah. So it'll be good. That much I can assure you. Okay, then. Thank you very much for your time. Take care. Have a nice day. All right. Bye-bye.